Hey guys, tonight we arrive somewhere that doesn't care about your notifications, your deadlines, or whether you remembered to charge your phone. You are standing barefoot on warm sand, the kind that still holds the day's heat like a friendly secret, and the ocean is breathing in and out in front of you, slow and steady, as if it's already trying to teach you how to sleep properly. Above you, the sky is switching on its lights, one by one. Not the harsh stadium lights of a modern city, but soft, patient stars, glowing like bedside lamps someone forgot to turn off. They're low, almost personal, close enough that you feel like you could accidentally bump your head on one if you stretch too much. This is Polynesia. Long before maps with neat borders, long before GPS voices telling you to recalculating in a judgmental tone, out here, the stars are co-workers, old friends, and occasionally supervisors. You take a moment to really look up, and that's your first mistake. You're already losing track of time. Down here, nobody is checking watches, because watches are useless when your commute involves thousands of kilometers of open ocean and a canoe that politely refuses to go faster just because you're anxious. You probably wouldn't survive this, by the way, not because you're weak, but because you'd ask too many questions, panic on day 2, and complain about legroom by day 3. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. While you're at it, go ahead and comment where you're listening from and what time it is there. Somewhere right now, someone is listening to this at noon, which feels illegal, but we won't judge. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not alone on this shore. Nearby, long, narrow canoes rest like sleeping animals. Their curved hulls pull gently onto the sand. They look fragile, if you don't know better, like something you'd be nervous to float in a swimming pool, let alone the Pacific Ocean. But these canoes have crossed distances that would make modern road trips cry quietly in the bathroom. They are built from knowledge layered over generations, every curve shaped by trial, error, and people who absolutely did not have the luxury of saying, "Let's just try again tomorrow." A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators successfully traveled and settled vast areas of the Pacific Hawaii i Aotearoa, Rapa Nui using non-instrument navigation, no compasses, no sextants, just brains, bodies, stories, and stars. It's impressive, yes, but also deeply unsettling if you like printed directions. The stars above you aren't random decoration. They are organized, categorized, remembered. Each one rises and sets in a predictable place, and Polynesian navigators memorize these paths the way you memorize the route to your favorite grocery store. There's comfort in that. Night after night, the same stars walk the same roads across the sky. Dependable in a way most people are not. You notice elders sitting nearby, talking quietly, their voices blending with the surf. Navigation knowledge isn't written down here. It's spoken, sung, repeated until it sticks. Star names are learned young, passed along like family recipes. And just like family recipes, some details change depending on who you ask. Historians still wonder if certain star paths were taught exactly the same across different island cultures, or if each community added its own quiet adjustments. Here's a lesser-known detail that feels almost unfairly charming. Navigators often imagined the canoe as stationary, while the islands moved toward them. Instead of thinking, "We are sailing to land," they thought, "We are holding steady while the world comes to us." It's a mental trick that reduces panic and keeps the mind calm. Honestly, it's something you could use during rush hour. The stars feel friendly because they are familiar. Polaris, the North Star, which you might be thinking about right now, is actually not very useful in much of Polynesia. It sits too low or disappears entirely. Instead, navigators rely on many stars, rising and setting in pairs, forming what's often called a star compass. It's not a physical object, but a mental map held gently in memory, like a lullaby. You never fully forget. You tilt your head back again, slower this time, and notice how the stars seem brighter near the horizon. That's partly atmospheric, partly imagination, and partly because you're finally paying attention. With no artificial light, The sky feels deeper, layered, like you could fall upward into it. The Milky Way stretches across the darkness, not as a dramatic spectacle, but as a quiet presence, the background hum of the universe. There's humor here too, though it's subtle. Imagine trying to explain this system to someone obsessed with straight lines and grid coordinates. So you just feel where you're going, yes, and you listen, and you wait, and you don't argue with the ocean, because that never ends well. You feel the temperature drop slightly as night settles in fully. The sand cools. The breeze shifts. These changes matter. Polynesian navigation isn't just about stars. It's about patterns, the way the wind smells, the sound of waves hitting the hull at different angles. Even now, before you leave shore, your body is being trained to notice. Somewhere above you, a star rises that will later guide a canoe for hours. It doesn't sparkle for drama, it just does its job. That's the mood here. No rush, no countdown, just steady movement through time and space. You sit down, cross-legged, and let your shoulders drop. The stars don't demand anything from you tonight. They're simply on, like lamps left, glowing to make sure you don't trip in the dark. And as you breathe in the salt air, you begin to understand why. For Polynesian navigators, the night sky wasn't frightening. It was familiar. It was home. The canoe waits for you before dawn, quiet and patient, as if it has already accepted whatever mistakes you're about to make. You step closer and notice the details you missed in the dark. The smoothness of the wood worn by countless hands, the fiber lashings tied with care instead of nails, the outrigger extending like a thoughtful arm to keep you from embarrassing yourself immediately. You climb in awkwardly at first, because grace is learned, not assumed. The canoe shifts under your weight, reminding you that balance here is a conversation, not a demand. You sit low, legs tucked, feeling the gentle rock that somehow manages to be both unsettling and comforting. This is not a vehicle designed for confidence. It's designed for cooperation. The horizon is still dark, but it's thinning, like ink diluted with water. Stars hang on longer than you expect, reluctant to clock out. One by one, they fade, except for a few stubborn ones hovering near the edge of the world, exactly where navigators want them. These are the stars you'll follow later, memorized not as dots, but as movements. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian voyages often began at night or before dawn. Stars are clearer, winds are steadier, and the sea tends to be calmer. Also, fewer people are awake to offer last-minute opinions, which is probably just as important. As the canoe slides into the water, you feel the temperature change instantly. The sea is cooler than the sand, and it wraps around the hull with a sound like slow applause. Paddles dip in quietly. Nobody. Splashing is amateur behavior, and you sense that the ocean has very strong opinions about amateurs. You glance back at the shore, already shrinking, and feel that familiar, uncomfortable thought creeping in. Are we really doing this? Historians still wonder how navigators managed fear on these journeys, whether it was trained out of them early or simply accepted as part of the process. Fear doesn't disqualify you. Here, it just sits beside you, like an annoying travel companion. The sky continues. Its slow transition. Colors appear so gradually you almost miss them. Deep blues, softening into gray, then into something faintly pink. It feels like the world is waking up politely, trying not to disturb anyone. The stars are still visible enough to work with, and that's what matters. Here's a quirky detail that often gets overlooked. Before departure, navigators would sometimes sit quietly and visualize the entire journey. Not just the destination, but the stars, winds, swells, and even moments of boredom. It's mental rehearsal. Centuries before sports psychology decided it was trendy. You settle into the rhythm of the paddle strokes. In, pull, lift, repeat. It's meditative, but don't romanticize it too much. Your arms are already complaining, and you've barely left home. You imagined explaining this soreness to someone later. I got tired following stars across the ocean. They would nod politely and change the subject. The canoe doesn't rush. Speed isn't the goal. Accuracy is You notice how the bow points slightly away from where you think you should be going? This is deliberate. Navigators account for currents and wind, setting a course that looks wrong but feels right. It's unsettling, like intentionally walking crooked and trusting you'll end up straight. Above you, the last guiding stars sink lower. Each one disappears at a specific point on the horizon. Marking direction, you begin to understand how these stars act like friendly lamps in a hallway, not showing you the destination, just enough light to take the next step without tripping. There's a soft joke passed between paddlers, something about someone's grip or timing. Humor travels well out here. It keeps things human. It reminds you that this isn't a mystical trance. It's skilled labor performed by people who get tired, hungry, and occasionally annoyed. The sea speaks constantly, but quietly. Small waves brush the hull at a steady angle, and you're told to notice that swell direction is a guide, even when stars vanish. Polynesian navigators train themselves to feel these patterns through their bodies, a technique sometimes called reading the ocean. It sounds poetic, until you realize it requires sitting still for hours, paying attention, and not overthinking it. Basically, the opposite of modern habits. As dawn approaches, the stars finally surrender. The sky lightens, and for a moment, you feel exposed. No lamps now, just open water in all directions. This is where trust matters. The course is set. The stars have done their part. Now memory takes over. You breathe in deeply. Salt, wood, faint traces of smoke from shore still clinging to the fibers. The canoe glides forward, steady, unbothered by your internal monologue. Somewhere ahead, land exists, even if you can't see it yet, and somehow, despite everything, that feels like enough. As the sun lifts itself higher, the stars retreat fully, but they don't leave your mind. They lingered there, lined up in neat, invisible rows, each with a name that feels more like a personality than a label. You're told these names softly, almost casually, as if someone is pointing out old neighbors rather than distant balls of fire. Theses, Hawaii's Dano. Flashcards, no diagrams, just repetition until the sky feels crowded with familiar faces. You repeat a few names under your breath, testing their weight. Some are short and sharp, others long and rolling, meant to be spoken slowly. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigation training began in childhood, with apprentices learning star paths, chants, and ocean signs years before they were allowed to guide a canoe themselves. By the time they led voyages, the knowledge wasn't something they recalled. It was something they lived inside. The lesson continues as the canoe moves. The horizon a clean circle around you. You're taught not just where stars rise and set, but how they behave. Some climb quickly, some linger, some wobble slightly as they skim the horizon. You're warned not to trust stars too close to the sea for too long. Atmospheric tricks can make them lie. Yes, even stars have their unreliable moments. Here's a lesser-known detail that feels almost mischievous. Navigators grouped stars into houses or families, using stories to bind them together. If you forgot one star, the story might lead you back to it. It's memory as narrative, which explains why you're already better at this than you expected. Your brain likes stories. It always, as the guide's voice stays calm, almost dry, as if explaining how to fold laundry. There's humor in that restraint. No dramatic declarations about destiny or the infinite. Just practical advice, like, if this star rises too far left, you've drifted. You imagine trying to deliver that sentence with flair and immediately failing. Historians still wonder how standardized these star names were across Polynesia. Some appeared nearly universal, while others vary by island, changing like accents. It suggests a shared foundation with room for local personality, which feels very human and reassuring. The sun climbs higher, and now the teaching shifts. Without stars visible, you practice recalling them anyway, pointing to empty sky. It feels ridiculous, like pointing at imaginary birds. But you do Italiano. And strangely, it works. You can picture the arc each star would take, where it would rise, where it would sink back into the ocean. The sea is calmer now, blue stretching into blue, and your mind starts to wander. That's corrected gently. Daydreaming is allowed, But drifting is not. Attention is a muscle here, trained slowly. You're reminded that navigation is about consistency, not intensity. Nobody expects brilliance. They expect steadiness. A light joke breaks the focus when someone misnames a star, earning a quiet laugh. It's the kind of humor that doesn't interrupt learning. It oils it. You relax a little more into your seat, shoulders loosening as the canoe continues its quiet slide forward. You realize that memorizing stars isn't about control. It's about familiarity. Like knowing which floorboard creaks in your house at night, the sky becomes something you move through without fear. And that thought settles in you, gently, like the beginning of sleep. By midday, the sun sits high and unapologetic, flattening the sky into a pale blue ball. The stars are gone from sight, but you're told not to let them leave your attention. They're still there, someone says, with the calm certainty of a person who has never needed proof to feel secure. You squint at the ocean instead, because that's where the next lesson waits. The water is no longer just water. It's a surface full of information, if you're patient enough to read it. The sky above reflects back at you, faint and broken. Stars replaced by glare and slow-moving clouds. You notice how the ocean doesn't behave the same in every direction. Some swells arrive long and smooth, others shorter, intersecting at gentle angles. This is the ocean's handwriting, and you're learning the alphabet one wave at a time. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators used ocean swells as directional guides, recognizing dominant wave patterns that remained consistent over long distances. These swells can continue even when winds change, acting like a memory embedded in the sea itself. It's oddly comforting to think the ocean remembers where it's been. Here's a quirky detail that tends to surprise people. Navigators often closed their eyes to feel swells more clearly. Without visual distraction, the body notices subtle rhythms better. You try it, briefly, and immediately wobble, because confidence takes practice. Still, you feel ether lift. The roll, the timing. It's like listening to a song you don't quite know yet. The sun's reflection creates shimmering paths on the water, and for a moment, it almost looks like stars have fallen into the sea. This is where the idea of the ocean as a mirror begins to make sense. Night doubles the sky below. De Erasis Italiano. Both states matter. Both are learned. Historians still wonder how much of this knowledge was consciously taught versus absorbed through experience. Was there a moment when someone explained swells in words? Or did apprentices simply feel it until it clicked? You suspect it's both, because humans rarely learn anything in just one way. A cloud drifts across the sun, dimming the glare. Someone points out how clouds often gather over islands, drawn by rising warm air. Even without land in sight, clouds can hint at what lies ahead. You file that away, impressed and mildly annoyed that clouds, of all things, are this helpful. Lunch is simple and unhurried. Dried fish, fruit, water pass carefully hand to hand. No one ruses. Eating fast would feel out of place here, like clapping during a lullaby. There's a light joke about who chews the loudest, and it's resolved with mock seriousness. The canoe continues on its line, steady despite currents trying subtle persuasion. You feel how the hull responds differently depending on angle, how the outrigger dampens sudden shifts. Design and knowledge blend seamlessly. This isn't technology versus nature. It's cooperation. As afternoon stretches on, you realize how tiring attention can be. Not exhausting, just gently draining. Like holding a soft smile for hours, you're reminded to relax without disengaging. It's a skill, one you don't practice enough in regular life. The horizon remains empty, but it doesn't feel endless anymore. You're learning to read what's present, not what's missing. And as the sun begins its slow descent, you sense the stars preparing, waiting their turn to reappear, right on schedule. As the sun eases lower, the heat softens, and the air feels less demanding. This is the hour when voices drop naturally. Not because anyone says so, but because the world seems to prefer it that way. You sit listening more than watching now. And that's exactly the point. Knowledge here isn't delivered like a lecture. It arrives sideways, through repetition and rhythm. Someone begins a chant, low and steady. Not performed for drama, but for memory. The words describe stars, swells, winds, and places that exist both physically and mentally. You don't understand every word, but you don't need to. The cadence does some of the work for you. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigational knowledge was primarily transmitted orally, using chants, songs, and stories rather than written records. This made the information portable, adaptable, and surprisingly resilient, at least until outside forces disrupted the system. Here's a lesson-known detail that feels almost comforting. Mistakes were part of learning, but they were corrected gently. Public embarrassment wasn't useful out here. If you made someone afraid to speak, you made them dangerous on a canoe. So errors were met with humor or quiet repetition, not criticism. You repeat parts of the chant under your breath, feeling the words settle into your memory differently than a list ever could. They stick because they move, because they have a beat. It's like remembering a song from years ago while forgetting what you ate yesterday. Historians still wonder how much individual creativity navigators were allowed. Did they ever invent new chants, or adjust old ones to fit changing conditions? Evidence suggests they did, carefully respecting tradition while acknowledging reality. Tradition, it turns out, is not as rigid as it sounds. The sea hums along, the canoe gliding smoothly. You're told to listen to the water against the hull, to notice changes in pitch. Higher, sharper sounds suggest different wave interactions. It's subtle, and you miss it at first. Then you catch it once, and suddenly it's obvious, like hearing a hidden harmony. A light joke passes about someone singing slightly off-key. It earns a few smiles. Even here, perfection is not the goal. Awareness is. As evening approaches, the sky deepens, and the first stars begin to blink on. There's a pause in conversation. Not planned, just shared. You feel it too. The stars aren't just tools, they're companions returning for the night shift. You realize you're no longer anxious about what you can't see. You're comfortable with what you remember. The chants continue softly, wrapping the canoe in sound. And for the first time, the journey feels less like travel and more like being held in motion. Night settles in without ceremony, just a gradual dimming, like someone slowly turning down a lamp. The stars return in familiar order, not rushing, not showing off. You recognize a few now, and that recognition brings a quiet relief you didn't expect. It's like spotting a friendly face in a crowd and realizing your shoulders have been tense all along. This is when the star compass comes alive in your mind. Not a spinning needle or a glowing screen, but a circle of remembered rising points, each star marking a direction as it lifts from the horizon, and another as it sinks away. You're told to imagine yourself at the center, still, while the sky turns. It feels backward at first. You want to chase movement, not let it pass you by. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators used a mental star compass, often divided into houses or directional segments, to maintain course across open ocean. Each star's rising and setting point corresponded to a heading, allowing navigators to steer accurately even over days or weeks. Here's a quirky detail that makes you smile. The compass isn't always imagined the same way. Some navigators pictured it as a circle around the canoe. Others imagined the canoe moving through fixed star paths. There was flexibility, as long as the result was the same. Different brains, same ocean. You test it quietly, aligning the canoe's bow with a star just above the waterline. It feels fragile, this trust in light that could disappear behind a cloud at any moment. And sometimes it does. That's expected. You shift to another star, then another. Redundancy is built in, like backup lullabies, in case one doesn't work. Historians still wonder how precise these mental models were from person to person. Did every navigator visualize the same structure, or did each mind build its own version? No two people remember a room the same way. After all, the ocean darkens, reflecting the sky in broken fragments. It feels as if you're floating between two heavens, one above, one below. Someone jokes softly that if you fall in, at least you'll land among the stars. It's not funny enough to wake you up, just enough to loosen the moment. Your eyes adjust, learning to see in low light. You notice subtle color differences. Now some stars warmer, some colder. Red stars sit heavier in the sky, steady and reassuring. Blue-white ones shimmer, a little impatient. You're told not to overthink it, which of course makes you overthink it briefly. Then laugh quietly at yourself. The canoe moves steadily, guided by stars that feel less like tools and more like agreements. You follow them not because they command you to, but because they've always been there, doing the same thing night after night. And in that reliability, you find a calm that feels very close to sleep. Clouds begin to drift in, slow and unbothered, as if they have all the time in the world, which, out here, they probably do. They don't arrive dramatically, no sudden darkness, no storm warnings, just soft shapes sliding across the stars, dimming them, then letting them glow again. You watch this without panic, because you're not supposed to panic. Panic is unhelpful and exhausting. This is where the lesson about clouds finally makes sense. You were told earlier that clouds can hide stars, but they can also reveal them. At first, that sounded like one of those statements meant to sound wise without meaning much. Now you see it. A star behind thin cloud doesn't disappear completely. It glows through, diffused, like a lamp behind a curtain. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators used cloud patterns as navigational clues, noticing how certain clouds formed over islands due to rising warm air. These clouds could be visible long before land itself, acting as subtle markers in an otherwise empty horizon. Here's a lesser-known detail that feels almost sneaky. Navigators also watched how clouds reflected light from islands at night. A low cloud bank might glow faintly, not from stars, but from lagoon water or sand reflecting moonlight upward. It's indirect evidence, but convincing if you know what to look for. You stare at a cloud that seems slightly brighter at its base, and for a moment, you think you're imagining it. Historians still wonder how consistently these signs were used, and whether modern observers underestimate how attuned the human eye can become. It's possible people today are just too distracted to notice. Someone quietly jokes that clouds are just the ocean thinking out loud. It earns a breathy laugh. Humor stays soft here. Like everything else, the stars shift in and out of view, and you practice switching guides without losing the overall course. This is the skill that separates memorization from mastery. Anyone can follow a single star. Staying calm when it disappears is the real test. The canoe rocks gently as swells pass beneath, unchanged by the sky above. You feel reassured by that. Even when vision falters, other senses step in. The world is layered, offering backups for those willing to notice. You realize you're no longer straining to see. Your eyes move lazily now, trusting peripheral vision. The sky doesn't feel like a puzzle anymore. It feels like a conversation that pauses and resumes naturally. Clouds thin again. Stars returning one by one. No applause, no announcement. Just quiet consistency. And as the canoe continues forward, you feel wrapped in this balance of light and shadow, guided not by certainty, but by gentle attention. Clouds begin to drift in, slow and unbothered, as if they have all the time in the world, which, out here, they probably do. They don't arrive dramatically, no sudden darkness, no storm warnings, just soft shapes sliding across the stars, dimming them, then letting them glow again. You watch this without panic, because you're not supposed to panic. Panic is unhelpful and exhausting. This is where the lesson about clouds finally makes sense. You were told earlier that clouds can hide stars, but they can also reveal them. At first, that sounded like one of those statements meant to sound wise without meaning much. Now you see it. A star behind thin cloud doesn't disappear completely. It glows through, diffused, like a lamp behind a curtain. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators used cloud patterns as navigational clues, noticing how certain clouds formed over islands due to rising warm air. These clouds could be visible long before land itself, acting as subtle markers in an otherwise empty horizon. Here's a lesser-known detail that feels almost sneaky. Navigators also watched how clouds reflected light from islands at night. A low cloud bank might glow faintly, not from stars, but from lagoon water or sand reflecting moonlight upward. It's indirect evidence, but convincing if you know what to look for. You stare at a cloud that seems slightly brighter at its base, and for a moment, you think you're imagining it. Historians still wonder how consistently these signs were used, and whether modern observers underestimate how attuned the human eye can become. It's possible people today are just too distracted to notice. Someone quietly jokes that clouds are just the ocean thinking out loud. It earns a breathy laugh. Humor stays soft here. Like everything else, the stars shift in and out of view, and you practice switching guides without losing the overall course. This is the skill that separates memorization from mastery. Anyone can follow a single star. Staying calm when it disappears is the real test. The canoe rocks gently as swells pass beneath, unchanged by the sky above. You feel reassured by that. Even when vision falters, other senses step in. The world is layered, offering backups for those willing to notice. You realize you're no longer straining to see. Your eyes move lazily now, trusting peripheral vision. The sky doesn't feel like a puzzle anymore. It feels like a conversation that pauses and resumes naturally. Clouds thin again. Stars returning one by one. No applause, no announcement. Just quiet consistency. And as the canoe continues forward, you feel wrapped in this balance of light and shadow, guided not by certainty, but by gentle attention. The night deepens, and with it, the feeling of being carried rather than moving. This is when attention shifts downward, away from the sky, into the water itself. You're encouraged to feel the ocean through your body, not analyze it too much, which immediately makes you analyze it too much. So that urge slowly gives up. Waves arrive in patterns, long and patient. You notice that even when surface ripples change, a deeper rhythm remains. These are the swells, born from distant winds, traveling for days across open water. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators could distinguish multiple swell patterns at once, using them to maintain direction even when stars were obscured. You try to separate them, one lifting the canoe gently from the side, another nudging from behind. It feels like sitting on a breathing creature, steady and unconcerned. When the canoe's angle shifts, you sense it immediately. No one says anything. Correction happens quietly, through small adjustments of the paddle. Here's a quirky detail that makes you smile despite yourself. Navigators sometimes name swells, just like stars. Giving them identity made them easier to remember. You imagine introducing yourself to a wave. It doesn't respond, which feels appropriate. Historians still wonder how much of this sensitivity was trained versus innate. Did some people simply have a better feel for motion? Or did long exposure shape everyone eventually? You suspect patience played a larger role than talent. The sound of water against the hull becomes a guide to a steady rhythm means the course is true. A change in pitch hints at deviation. It's subtle enough that you miss it once, then catch it, then can't stop hearing it, like noticing a clock ticking after someone points it out. A soft joke passes about the canoe complaining when it's pushed the wrong way. You listen, half expecting it to speak up. It doesn't, but you understand the sentiment. Your muscles relax as trust builds. You're no longer bracing for surprise. The ocean feels predictable. Not because it's simple, but because you've learned to listen. And in that listening, you find the same calm rhythm as your own breathing. Stars continue their slow paths above, swells their endless journeys below. You sit between them, held by patterns older than memory, drifting not aimlessly, but attentively. And for the first time, you realized how easy it would be to fall asleep, right here, rocked gently by the sea. Sometime deep in the night, when the stars feel settled and the ocean has fully committed to its rhythm, movement appears where there shouldn't be any. At first, you think it's just your eyes adjusting, playing tricks in the dark. Then you see it again, a quick silhouette, a flicker against the starlit surface. Birds, it feels wrong at this hour, like spotting commuters on the road at 3 in the morning. But seabirds don't follow your schedule. They follow habits older than yours. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators observed bird behavior closely, especially at dawn and dusk, using flight patterns to infer proximity to land. These birds are not random. They move with intention, low and direct. Some species fly out to sea to feed during the day and return to land at night. Others do the opposite. You're taught to notice not just the presence of birds, but their direction, height, and urgency. A bird circling means something different than one flying straight and fast. Here's a lesser-known detail that feels oddly practical. Navigators memorized which birds slept on land and which could rest on water. Spotting the wrong kind of bird at the wrong time could send you confidently in the wrong direction. Nature offers clues, but it does not simplify them for your convenience. You watch one bird disappear into the dark, heading steadily west. Someone nods, quietly. No celebration, just acknowledgement. Historians still wonder how reliable birds truly were as indicators, and how often navigators trusted them over other signs. Likely, birds were one voice in a larger chorus, not the soloist. A gentle joke passes about birds being unpaid navigational assistants. It earns a soft exhale of laughter. Even here, you need moments like that to reset your attention. The canoe continues on its line, guided now by a combination of stars, swells, and these brief winged messages. You're struck by how layered this system is. No single sense carries the burden alone. Vision, hearing, touch, memory, they all take turns leading. As the night wears on, birds appear less frequently. Their absence is information too. You file it away without anxiety. The sea remains steady. The stars remain patient. You shift slightly, easing a stiff muscle, careful not to disrupt the balance. Comfort matters, but so does awareness. You find a middle ground, alert without effort. The thought occurs to you that this kind of attention feels different from focus back home. It's wide, not narrow, soft, not sharp. And as another bird passes silently overhead, you feel that quiet certainty settle deeper, like a promise you don't need explain. The hours stretch, elastic and forgiving, until time stops feeling like something you can measure. You're no longer counting stars or swells consciously. They're just there, doing what they do, while you sit inside the pattern they make together. This is the part nobody romanticizes properly, the long middle, where nothing dramatic happens, and that's exactly why it works. Doubt arrives quietly, the way it always does. Not as panic, just as a small question tapping on the inside of your thoughts. Are we still on course? You don't voice it. Nobody else seems worried. And worry is contagious in close quarters. Instead, you check the signs you've learned. The feel of the swell, the angle of the canoe, the slow parade of stars. Everything agrees. The question fades. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators relied on confidence built through extensive training and repeated voyages. By the time someone led a canoe, they had already spent years observing and assisting, absorbing trust through experience rather than reassurance. Here's a quirky detail that feels almost modern. Navigators were known to test themselves by intentionally questioning their own course, mentally rechecking every sign. Doubt wasn't an enemy, it was a diagnostic tool. You smile at that, recognizing the difference between useful doubt and the kind that just likes to talk. Historians still wonder how leadership worked during these voyages. Was authority absolute or collaborative? Evidence suggests a quiet hierarchical respect given not through volume or force, but through demonstrated calm. The person who stayed steady when things felt uncertain naturally became the one everyone followed. A soft joke slips through the tension when someone mutters that if they're wrong, at least the stars will look nice while being wrong. It's not hilarious, but it loosens the chest a bit. Humor here functions like stretching it, keeps things from locking up. The ocean remains cooperative, though you're careful not to mistake that for kindness. Respect is the better word. You feel small, but not insignificant. The canoe glides as if it knows the way independently, which is comforting and mildly insulting at the same time. You notice how your body has adapted. Muscles no longer ache in complaint. They've shifted into endurance mode. Your breathing syncs with the swell. Even your thoughts have slowed, spacing themselves out like footsteps on sand. At some point, you realized you haven't looked back toward where you came from in a long while. There's no reason to. The past isn't useful for steering, only what's around you and what you remember. The stars continue their calm procession. The swell holds steady. And in this balance between trust and checking, certainty and doubt, you understand why this knowledge lasted so long. It doesn't demand perfection. It asks for presence, and presence, right now, feels effortless. As the night leans toward its deepest hour, the sky feels closer somehow, like it has lowered itself to listen. The stars don't just guide you now, they watch, not in a judgmental way, more like patient elders who have seen this exact scene unfold countless times and see no reason to interfere. This is where myth quietly enters the canoe, not as a distraction from navigation, but as part of it. You're reminded that many Polynesian stars are not just markers, but beings with stories, personalities, and relationships. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian cosmology often intertwined practical navigation with mythology, embedding environmental knowledge within stories of gods, ancestors, and heroes. You hear a tale murmured softly about a sky ancestor who placed stars deliberately so people would never be truly lost. It's told without dramatic flair, almost casually, like recounting something obvious. The humor is dry. Someone adds that the ancestor clearly underestimated how confused humans could still be. A few quiet smiles rippled through the canoe. Here's a lesser-known detail that adds warmth to the moment. Certain stars were considered protective, watched for reassurance rather than direction. Navigators would check in with them the way you might glance at a familiar landmark, just to feel grounded. Not everything in the sky was a tool. Some things were comfort. Historians still wonder how much these beliefs actively shaped decision-making at sea. Did navigators ever change course based on mythic interpretation alone? Or did myth mainly serve to reinforce confidence in memory? The truth likely lives somewhere in between, like most human systems. The ocean doesn't react to stories. It keeps its steady rhythm. Indifferent, but reliable. You find that comforting. Myth and reality coexists without argument here. One gives meaning, the other gives feedback. A soft joke passes about asking the gods for better weather reviews next time. It's said with respect, not humor, like belief, has its place. You gaze upward again, recognizing more stars than you did hours ago. They feel less distant now, less abstract. The sky has become familiar territory, mapped not on paper, but in you. As the canoe moves forward, you realize that faith here isn't blind. It's practiced. It's built from repetition, success, and survival. The stars don't demand belief. They reward attention, and wrapped in that understanding, you feel a quiet assurance settle in, as steady as the swell beneath you. The night stretches wider, quieter, as if even the stars have settled into a slower breathing pattern. There are long pauses now and instructions. No stories, no jokes, just shared silence. At first, silence feels like something to fill. Then it becomes something to rest inside. You sit with your gaze, drifting gently from star to star. Not tracking, not measuring, who's noticing. This is the space between stars. The dark that makes their light possible. You hadn't thought much about it before, but now it feels important. Navigation isn't only about markers. It's also about the gaps, the waiting, the patience to not demand constant confirmation. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators spent long hours in near silence, especially at night, conserving energy and sharpening perception. Talking too much dulls attention. Quiet, it turns out, is a tool. Here's a lesser-known detail that feels almost luxurious. Experienced navigators were sometimes encouraged to rest briefly, even sleep lightly, trusting others to maintain course. This wasn't neglect. It was confidence in the system. Knowledge shared is knowledge that can carry you when you close your eyes. You let your eyelids lower for a moment, not fully asleep. Who's soften. The canoe's motion rocks you gently, side to side, like a cradle that doesn't insist on anything from you. The sound of water becomes less distinct, blending into a steady hush. You're still aware, but not alert. It's a comfortable middle state. You rarely allow yourself. Historians still wonder how navigators balanced rest and responsibility on multi-day voyages. How much sleep was safe? How much was necessary? The answers likely varied, adjusted by experience and trust rather than strict rules. A small sound breaks the quiet, someone shifting position, someone else stifling a yawn. It's met with understanding, not irritation. Fatigue is expected. The journey accounts for it. You look up again, and the stars feel calmer now, less urgent. They don't demand tracking every movement. They're just there, keeping their slow promises. You notice how the canoe remains steady, even when your attention drifts. That steadiness is earned. Built from hours of careful alignment, the silence grows comfortable, almost heavy, like a warm blanket. Thoughts slow spacing themselves out. You stop narrating everything internally. There's nothing to solve right now. As the canoe glides onward, you realize this quiet isn't emptiness. It's fullness without noise. And held within it, you feel closer to sleep than you have all night, floating gently between stars and water, trusting both to keep doing what they be, always done. The first hint of land arrives without announcement. No dramatic silhouette, no triumphant shout. It's a change in feeling more than sight. A subtle shift in the air that your body notices before your mind catches up. The breeze smells different, now less open, more layered, carrying traces of plants you can't see yet. You inhale slowly, unsure. Then again, more certain this time. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigators could detect land through indirect signs long before it became visible, including changes in wind patterns, cloud behavior, sea color, and even smell. Land announces itself quietly, if you're paying attention. The stars are still out, but they've softened, losing some of their authority as guides. Their job is nearly done. You notice that you're no longer checking them with the same urgency. Instead, your attention drifts outward, scanning the darkness ahead. The ocean feels different too. Swells shorten slightly, breaking patterns they held for days. It's like hearing a song fade out at the end. Not abruptly, just naturally. Here's a lesser-known detail that feels almost tender. Experienced navigators were taught not to celebrate too early. False signals happen. Birds can mislead. Clouds can tease. Confidence is quiet until land is undeniable. You appreciate that restraint. It feels earned. Historians still wonder how often navigators adjusted course in these final hours, and how much debate occurred in silence. Was there discussion, or did everyone simply feel the same shift and respond together? Standing orders give way to shared intuition here. A soft joke slips through when someone mutters that the island better be real this time. It's said gently, with affection, not doubt. The canoe glides on, unoffended. The sky lightens, almost Dawn approaches again, completing a full circle. You realize how little time has meant during this journey. No clocks, no schedules, just cycles night into day, stars into sun, certainty into arrival. Then you see it. Not clearly, not fully. Just a darker shape against the dark. A thickening of the horizon that refuses to move when you blink. Land doesn't shimmer like clouds. It stays put. That's how you know. Relief doesn't rush in. It settles, you feel it in your chest, easing pressure you didn't realize you were carrying. The stars above fade quietly, their lamps dimming as the world takes over again. As the canoe moves closer, the scent of earth grows stronger. Birds appear again, closer now, louder, less mysterious. The ocean's rhythm shifts, responding to the shallower depths ahead. Everything agrees. You sit there, calm, present, knowing you've arrived not by force or speed, but by attention. And as the outline of the island slowly becomes undeniable, you understand that arrival isn't a moment. It's a gentle realization that you are exactly where you were meant to be. The canoe eases toward shore with the same unhurried grace it carried across the open ocean. There's no sudden burst of energy, no victory paddling. Arrival here isn't a finish line. It's a soft transition, like waking naturally instead of to an alarm. The island grows clearer as the light strengthens, revealing palms, dark stone, and the uneven outline of land that feels strangely welcoming. A widely accepted historical fact is that Polynesian navigation knowledge declined sharply in many regions after European contact, disrupted by colonization, missionary influence, and the introduction of Western navigational tools. Star pads, once memorized by heart, were gradually replaced by compasses and charts, practical but less personal. As the canoe drifts closer, You imagine this knowledge thinning, generation by generation, not because it failed, but because it was no longer asked for. Skills unused don't disappear loudly. They fade quietly, like stars lost in city light. You feel a small ache at that thought. Surprising in its weight, here's a lesser-known detail that brings some warmth back. In the 20th century, Polynesian navigation experienced a revival. Voyages were intentionally reconstructed using traditional methods, led by master navigators who still carried the old knowledge. Canoes once again crossed open ocean guided by stars, swells, and memory. The past didn't vanish. It did. Historians still wonder how much navigational knowledge was lost forever, and how much survives unrecorded, living quietly in families and communities. Oral traditions are resilient, but they are also vulnerable. Recovery is part archaeology, part trust. A light joke surfaces about how awkward it must have been explaining to outsiders that, yes, you really can cross an ocean without instruments. And no, you don't feel like proving it today. You smile at that, imagining the patience required. The canoe grounds gently in shallow water. You step out, legs slightly unsteady, not from exhaustion, but from the shift back to stillness. The sand feels different. Here, cooler, darker, firm beneath your feet. You realize how long it's been since you stood on unmoving ground. Looking back at the canoe, you see it differently now. It's not just a vessel, it's a library. Every rope, every curve holds information. And knowledge like this doesn't belong to the past. It belongs to those willing to learn slowly. As the sun rises fully, the stars disappear from view, but not from relevance. You carry them with you, mapped quietly inside, and as the island wakes around you, you sense that this journey isn't ending. It's settling, folding itself neatly into memory, ready to be revisited whenever you look up at the night sky and feel guided, even just a little. The day has fully arrived now, but something in you remains tuned to the night. Even as the island stirs birds louder, leaves shifting, the first signs of people moving somewhere beyond the trees, you still feel the stars, like warmth lingering after a blanket is pulled away. They're not visible anymore, yet they haven't gone anywhere important. You sit for a while, unhurried, letting your body recalibrate to land. The ground is solid, dependable, almost boring compared to the subtle motion you've lived with for so long. You realize how quickly you adapt to whatever holds you. The ocean held you gently, and you learned to trust it. Now the earth does the same. A widely accepted historical fact is that the same stars used by Polynesian navigators centuries ago still follow the same rising and setting paths today. Earth turns, stars keep time. The system hasn't changed, even if the world around it has. Here's a quiet, lesser-known detail that feels comforting. Many navigators spoke of stars as teachers that never retire. You don't exhaust them by using them. You don't wear them out by forgetting and They wait, patiently, like instructions that don't get annoyed when you reread them. Historians still wonder how many people, even today, carry fragments of this knowledge without naming it, a sense of direction that feels intuitive. A comfort with night skies, a habit of looking up instead of down when uncertain. Perhaps some memory travels without words. You think back to the stars as friendly bedtime lamps, and it no longer sounds poetic. It sounds accurate. Lamps don't demand attention. They don't shout. They simply stay on, offering enough light to move safely, or to rest beside. A soft joke crosses your mind about how none of this would fit into a modern instruction manual. Step 1. Memorize the universe. Step 2. Trust it. Somehow, though, it worked for generations. Across impossible distances, you stand, stretching slowly, feeling the echo of the canoe's motion in your muscles. The journey feels complete, but not closed. At night, wherever you are, these same stars will rise again. Over rooftops, over highways, over places that have forgotten how dark the sky can be. And when they do, you'll know they're still doing their job. Quietly, reliably, guiding anyone patient enough to notice. Now, you don't need to hold on to the journey anymore. You've arrived, and nothing else is required of you tonight. Let your breathing slow, matching the steady rhythm you felt on the water. That gentle rise and fall that never hurried you, never asked you to be anywhere else. Imagine the stars above you again, soft, dimmed, like lamps turned low for sleep. They're still there, even if you don't look. The ocean is calm. The canoe is at rest. Your body knows this rhythm now, and it remembers how to let go. With each breath out, feel the weight of the day ease away, as if it's being carried off by a tide that doesn't need your help. Thoughts can drift, like clouds passing over familiar stars. Nothing to follow, nothing to solve. You are safe. You are steady. You are allowed to rest. Let the night hold what's left. Sweet dreams.